to the young believer, if you feel like you want to go to LA, I would encourage you that you don't do it. I was a kid who was a dreamer. Like, I just had big dreams, and I really felt like I want to move to Los Angeles. This whole influencer thing opened up to me. And so we're in North Hollywood. We're making skits and videos every single day. That was the hustle.
Jeez.
I start making my income, making videos, making skits, making sketches, promoting brands, promoting products. I would rather trade the benefits of being a follower, a son of God, than any benefit the world could ever give me. I would give up everything that the world could ever give me. Because by the way, I've tasted most of what the world can offer.
Wow.
I have.
Yeah.
I've tasted the heights of influence. I've been around the circles. I've been around celebrities, not church celebrities, real celebrities. Like, this gets a hold of my life. And it's literally a 180 complete change.
Welcome to the Faith Hustle Podcast, where we help young Christian entrepreneurs learn how to build their business and careers God's way. My name is McQuenda. I'm your host. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years. And in that time, I have been mentored and guided by some of the most successful people I know that were not just crushing it in business, but in their family life, in their relationships, their devotion to Christ. They had this holistic view of success. And that was attractive to me. That's what I wanted for my life. And if you're here, that's also what you want for your life too. We teach on 5 pillars here at Faith Hustle, on being spirit-led, having a heart of stewardship, humility, integrity, and generosity. Those are the 5 things we believe makes up someone that has a faith hustle. And that describes you. That describes what you're also pursuing. I want to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, or any other medium for that matter. We would love for you to tap in with us as we develop and grow together in all that God has for us. As well as, if you've been listening for a little bit, help your boy out and leave us a review. It helps us tremendously to get the word out. Thank you for all the people who've left reviews. There's some beautiful reviews I've been reading. It's amazing. Thank you so much. It really does help. And I appreciate, and I'm so grateful for this community that's built. We literally have people who faithfully watch in London and Paris and Tanzania and all these different countries, almost 30 countries now, which is just mind-blowing to me. And so I'm so grateful for y'all, and let's continue to grow together. Today, I don't have a guest. I got a brother. He has become a brother to me. He's got a wild testimony, an incredible story from being really in the thick of the LA content creation influencer world way back when, before even the term influencer was a thing. He was in the thick of that, and how God rescued him, saved him, and how he's making content for the kingdom has just been phenomenal. And he's just been a great friend to me, a great guide in my life, and just someone that I think you're going to glean a lot from. So I want y'all to lean in. I got my brother Ty with me.
Yo, McQuenda.
Let's go.
Man, I'm so grateful to be sitting with you, bro. It's so funny that you mentioned the influencer world, and I know we'll get into that a little bit, but man, when I look at you and when I look at what you're doing with Faith Hustle, this is a community for influencers.
Yeah.
And it's time that kingdom people redeem influencers.
Absolutely.
And for so long, we've seen this influencer term become trashed, because it's like, an influencer could be anybody who says anything crazy, random, or outlandish.
Yeah.
And then they'll have a platform.
Literally.
Just like this.
It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be good. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And by the way, that was one of the best intros I've probably ever received. So
really?
Shout out to you, bro. Oh yeah.
Hey.
I was sitting here like, wow, all those things. I mean, wow, this is crazy.
That's how guest preachers feel on the platform. They're just like this.
They must.
Like,
They're sitting in the cut. They're like, yeah, just let me take this. This is feeding my ego.
He hails from from LA, and he has an international ministry.
The global evangelist steps up to the pulpit, bringing the word of God. His lips are anointed like the coal that. Man,
I've seen some intros and I'm like, he's international. He's only gone to Bahamas. Like he hasn't left his state.
Why do we exaggerate so much?
We really do.
We do. It's like this, like, I don't know what it is, but it's like this thing that we as Christians do. We're like, oh, global evangelist who's been traveling. It's like, yeah, I mean, he's been all over the Dallas Metroplex, but I mean, other than that.
I mean, but I think also maybe back then, like, it was hard to travel. I don't know. Like, maybe it was difficult, but that used to be a real
Jesus
thing.
got around on foot, bro.
He did.
We can get around.
He got around on a donkey.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. But man, I'm glad you're here for real. And this is going to be a laid back conversation. Again, there's going to be a lot of gems through this, but we're going to just flow. It's going to be a good time. But man, I wanted to talk through one. We met through our friends at SALT. Shout out to SALT.
Yes.
We just had, I mean, you're listening to it. It's been passed, but we had a SALT conference here in Dallas. Luke and the crew put on an incredible event. I was inspired. I was encouraged. God spoke to me through it. And it's just for church creatives and content creators. And it was phenomenal. And we met kind of through that conference in that community of content creators. And we were on the same group chat. And I was like, who's this guy? I'm like, man, this dude. And I think you reached out to me first. And I was like, man, this is dope. And then, you know, we kept in contact a little bit here and there. And then at some point, we're like, let's just like intentionally talk. And you would just encourage me with voice notes. I'm a voice note dude. I love voice notes. So we were voice note galore.
That's my love language, bro. To be honest with you, my love language is definitely voice notes. If you get a voice note from me, it's because I'm really, oh yeah. That's my get down, man.
I love it. And so we were just doing that, and then we're like, let's get coffee, let's get together. And our coffee, I don't think we've done a coffee hang that was less than 2 hours.
Oh, easy. It's easy 2 hours. Doesn't matter. But I think that speaks to like, when God brings somebody into your life, you can just know. Yeah. And obviously, you know, you have to go through seasons with people. You have to walk through life with people. But there's just these connections that sometimes come, and you're like, man, like, there's just something there. There's some kind of synergy. And it's kind of like, I think I said this to you when we first got together and we were hanging out. I'm like, man, it kind of reminds me of the scripture where Elizabeth's baby leaped inside of her stomach. Because it's like, there's things that you say that I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what God's been speaking to me. And like, God will bring people together. And I feel like that's how you know when you have a God connection.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Ron Starling, which you have an episode with, that was amazing. He actually pointed me to Faith Hustle, and then the SALT thing came about, and I think I had followed you prior to, and I was like, oh yeah, no, this is dope. And you're local to Dallas, so no, it just worked out. And another God connection with Ron. That's a good brother.
Oh yeah, shout outs to Ron.
Shouts out to Ron.
He made a post about me. It made me almost want to cry. I was like, man, it's so touching. But no, a lot of great people in that group. But yeah, like I said, the brotherhood's been formed. You invited me to your mother-in-law's conference, and I was like, oh, like, this would be nice. It's like, it's a women's conference. And I'm like, where's it at? It's like, what's that Globe Life Field? I'm like, where the Texas Rangers play? Like, I thought you meant like storefront church down the street. And Woman Evolve, if you're not familiar with that conference, it was, I mean, excellence is like, it was phenomenal. Yeah. Like, I now understand, like, oh, there's levels to this. There's levels to this excellence. It was so powerful. I mean, I'm talking about this women's conference was sponsored by Wells Fargo. And these women of God were out here speaking in tongues, getting delivered, and running around this Globe Life Field. It turned into a holy
church, bro. It was church in
church.
there. And to see that whole progression, I kind of came into the story around the time that ministry was actually birthed, which is so crazy because that was like in 2018. So to see it, and this is just a digression, but to see it go from being we had a church campus in Denver, Colorado, and to see it go from Denver with 2,000 women to now Globe Life Field, and there's 40,000 women in there. It's crazy. Evidence of what can happen when you're obedient to God. And I know Pastor Sarah has incredible things out there where she's told the testimony, told the story. And the most beautiful thing about it, man, is like just watching how she reacts to it. She's blown away. Like, she's not, there's never been a moment where she's like expectant of it. Like, oh, this is just how it should be. Every time she approaches it, it's like this, God, are you sure? Like, God, here we go again. Just so honest. And I think that's why God can trust her and God can elevate her, and just to be up close and see that it's and beautiful. The whole
team, like, y'all really cared for people. Like, it wasn't like just this thing like come and like see us do our thing. Like, there's a lot of care for people. Like, people flew there from every state you can think of, from other countries, and these women were loved on, you know, in this big, you know, room, and so I was just grateful for the invitation to come, and you've been on that team, and you do a lot with one church in LA. You do your own consecration, you have your own agency, you have all these different things that you're doing. But man, I want to go back to the beginnings of this, of your story, because you're not from LA originally. And I kind of teased it of how you were kind of in this influencer circle and what God did. But, obviously, I love to hear bits of this story of how you got there, and kind of what God did.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy. And I actually just sat down to record, and you know this because I sent it to you.
Have you been listening to this podcast and thinking to yourself, man, I want to start a faith podcast too? Well, guess what? You can. It's never been easier than ever to start a show and to get it out to the masses to make an impact for God's kingdom. But it's also never been harder. 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3, not because there's a lack of good ideas. There is a lack of good foundation of what makes a great show. Making a great show is actually an art. It's actually a skill. But good news is it's a skill that you can learn. That's why I put together a free resource for you that explains the 5 things every podcast needs to make it a great show. It's a quick read, but it will be the difference of your podcast going the distance and making an impact. Now more than ever, do we need more faith-based podcasts that enter into the space to be a light into the darkness. And I believe this resource can be your first step. All you got to do is hit the link in the description below and I'll send it to you for free. Now let's get back to the episode.
If you want to see that, you can go check that out. I'm sure we can link it below.
Yeah, I'll
something.
put a link on there.
But the way that LA came about is I was a kid who was a dreamer. Like I just had big dreams and I really felt like I want to move to Los Angeles. I was convinced. When I was 13 years old, I got to travel as a hip hop and break dancer, which is just a crazy.
I need to put a clip in here of your moves.
We gotta find something,
file.
man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. If you look hard enough, you'll find it. But I was exposed to a lot at a young age. I was able to travel and see a lot of this entertainment world. And I remember just the conversations that were being had. And it was always that all roads point to LA. All roads point to LA. And so I was convinced, 13 up until the moment I turned 18. So 5 years of, high school, middle school, all that. I'm like, I'm going to LA as soon as I graduate. And I did. And the journey in California was the craziest thing because you go out there with a big dream. You go out there excited and you want to become a star. Like most people that want to go there, they want to make it in entertainment. You want to make a name for yourself. You want to become something. And it's interesting because, and I'll probably get to it and try to piece this together because this is what I'm doing in my life right now is I'm pulling back, I'm zooming out, and I'm looking at all the pieces that make up my story and all the pieces that make up who I am. And I'm putting them together so that I can better understand myself. And so as I've investigated the journey to LA, I see more of it. I see it more clearly. I see the motivations behind it. I see the not so great motivations and I see the beautiful things like I want to be impactful. I want to entertain people. I want people to be inspired and encouraged by my content.
Yeah.
And so that was the driving thing. If I were to talk about the more positives, it was just a desire to move there and to make some kind of impact, to make a name for myself and to, make some money, honestly. I wanted to make some money and be able to take care of my family and the whole thing, buy my mom a house and, whatever. She didn't need me to do that. I don't have that kind of story. Let me not hype it up like it's like, I need to buy my mom a house to get her.
He was a ball player.
But I just had big dreams, man. And I think if you're a dreamer, you will go to extreme lengths to make your dream possible. Like you'll do anything because you believe in it so much. And that's what I did, man. I moved out to LA, 18 years old, and got an apartment. My parents were there for the first week and then they left. And when they left, it was the deepest, darkest, sadness. Because I was everything that was familiar to me, it was like I was in this bliss because they're there with me. I'm like, oh man, my family's here. Cool. We're going to start moving forward. I meet my acting coach who's kind of going to take me under her wing. And so that's what I do. And then what I didn't realize is I got thrown into the wild, wild west. Like when you go to Los Angeles, think of everything that culture promotes right now.
Right.
You know, everything that you could possibly think as a young man is what you want. You know, the success, the fame, women, you name it. Like all these things that you think you want, they're at your fingertips. They're literally at your doorstep. And so I'm thrown into the wild, wild west. I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody around me. I don't have a community. And so I'm trying to figure things out. And it's crazy how God, even when I wasn't really following him, had my back.
Wow.
Like his grace and his mercy, just the fact that he was seeing me all the way throughout it. Now that I'm, like I said, piecing these things together, I see how God throughout all of it was there, bringing me what I needed when I didn't know it, bringing me friends when I was praying and I didn't even know how to pray.
Right.
I'm like, God, I'm alone. Like, I want friends. And so move out there to pursue this career in entertainment. And I know I'm a little bit long-winded, so please forgive me.
I mean, this is the point of a podcast.
But yeah, so move out to LA and I decide I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get it out of the mud. And so this is the first time I'm figuring out how to be an adult. I'm figuring out how to live on my own. I'm figuring everything out. So I'm thrown into what I call the wild, wild west of LA. And it's also like, it's really the school of hard knocks. Like you are going to confront and face everything. It's not daffodils and daisies and rainbows. It's not a place for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
And even now, I would say this to the believer, to the young believer, if you feel like you want to go to LA, I would encourage you that you don't do it. Unless
asterisks.
Unless you absolutely feel called. You have to feel called. Because the spiritual climate in a city like LA
is wild.
Is unlike anything in and there's different things everywhere. But the region there is
LA's different.
Is different.
Yeah.
It's really different. So picture that. 18 years old, very naive, trying to figure it out, and just gets exposed to all kinds of things. I start going out on auditions. I start trying to get into as many rooms as I could. And I was fortunate enough to be connected to an agent and a manager through my acting coach. And so a lot of the steps that people try really, really hard to get were kind of just handed to me in a way. And I had a following already because of the dance stuff that I did. So at the time, it was just a bonus. It was just like a thing. Now it's literally... It's a mandatory thing before you get signed that you have a following or that you have a presence on social media.
That's crazy.
Like that's one of the factors. That's literally one of the determining factors now for actors or for models or for anybody who wants to pursue entertainment. In order for you to get representation, they want to see what you're working with on social media. And if you don't have a lot to work with, like the likelihood of you getting signed is so It's
the same thing with book publishers now.
For
like
sure.
They look at email lists and your social following. They're like, what do you got?
Because it's everything now. You know, it's the number one way to communicate and advertise and reach people. And so I'm in LA pursuing the acting thing, and it is slow, like just molasses slow, like turtle in the race slow. It's slow, and I'm alone. You know, I'm alone and I'm trying to figure it out. And so from that moment, I journeyed to finding another friend, which that story is really interesting because I'm literally driving and I see somebody from the dance tour that I was on, and I hadn't seen her in years. Very familiar hairstyle. And I'm like, that looks just like so-and-so. And I'm like, I wonder if that's so-and-so. And I keep driving and I pull out my phone. I'm like, I wonder if I still have her number. I sent her a text. And it turned out it was her. She called me immediately and was like, turn the car around, come back. That was me. I called off my acting lesson that day and I ended up just hanging out with this friend, catching up. And so that was my first introduction into like finding another friend. And so now I start to get engulfed in her world. She's a professional dancer. And so I'm around all these influential dancers and they're encouraging me, hey, you need to make some videos of you dancing. Yeah. And so I start to do that. And I had kind of moved away from dance because I honestly was intimidated, man. Like in LA, the people who are the best in their cities move to LA. Mm-hmm. So you've got the best of the best anywhere. Yeah. And everyone is there trying to pursue the same dream. And I had so many rejection issues that I was dealing with. And I didn't know this at the time, but because I had been rejected so much, I ran from a lot of things that I used to have love for. And that caused a lot of pain and a lot of resentment towards certain things. But as I keep journeying, I find more friends, and I found this other guy who we connected through social media, which is crazy. I've always connected with people through social media. I've always been a bridge builder. Before I even knew what it looked like to connect dots and stuff, I've just always been doing it.
Yeah.
And so Vine at the time was like the thing.
I remember Vine.
And there was a guy, and he made hilarious Vines. His Vine was named like Chocolate Metaphor. I don't know if like you would know this dude or not, but he had hilarious Vines. And the dude was like, hey, I'm coming to LA. I would love to like, visit. Is it cool if I stay with you? I was like, yeah, sure, come out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's going to be a week. It turned into he became my roommate. He literally came out and
he didn't leave
like,
the couch.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He literally did not leave the couch. But what happened with that was he started to introduce me to this network of influencers who were creating skits and sketches and more stuff that had to do with like acting and kind of the things that I moved there to pursue.
Yeah.
And so now I'm in this world of all these influencers, and there's another creator who I love. Like, I love this person. His name's Landon Moss, and he was a Viner, and he's an actor now, filmmaker, just really, really talented.
Yeah.
But Landon was like, bro, you're in everyone's videos. You're serving everybody, essentially is what he's telling me. Like, you're doing this for everybody else. What about you? Like, you need to take a chance on yourself. You need to put yourself in videos. You need to make your own skits. You need to make your own videos because you want to be an actor. So why aren't you making content? And at the time, like, there was this narrative that was like, well, I don't want to make content. Like, I just want to act.
Yeah, because I mean, it was frowned upon in so many ways. Like, it wasn't seen as Viners. It was again, that term influencer. I remember that era. It was very new, and it was like,
oh yeah,
okay, this is because it was 6 seconds. It was so fast, and how people were getting these crazy followings, and then but I think there was still that. Well, yeah, you're Vine famous, but not like Hollywood. And it's funny now, those folks in Hollywood, they sometimes struggle to communicate in the era that we live in, and so it's an interesting perspective. Yeah,
and I think that moment for me was like a critical moment. It was a moment where somebody saw something in me and said, take a chance on yourself. I want to see you do this. And I took it and I ran with it, and I started making skits, and I started getting around more people, and that's kind of how the world of this whole influencer thing opened up to me. I already had a bit of a following from the dance stuff, and so I kind of had something to work with. And then I started to get around all these other influencers, and so now it goes from me making my own videos to everyone's calling everyone. We're meeting up for a year straight. We were in North Hollywood, which is like a suburb in like the Valley, the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
And so we're in North Hollywood. We're making skits and videos every single day. That was the hustle. And so me as a business owner, which is funny, that was my business. I was the business.
Yeah.
So as an entertainer, you are the business.
Yeah.
And when you're young and naive, you don't understand how to structure a business. You don't know all this stuff. So I'm just making videos and taking on brand deals, and that's how I'm figuring out how to make money. And so I start making my income making videos, making skits, making sketches, promoting brands, promoting products, doing all these brand deals. And that was how I was making money. And at the time, it was good money.
It was enough to live in LA.
It was enough to live in LA.
Which is crazy.
It was enough to, which stewardship, if I were to go on a tangent, but man, I was such a poor steward. As soon as I would get the money,
it was gone.
Because I'm like, oh, I got another one coming.
Yeah.
And so like I had no concept of how to budget. I had no concept of how to steward my money well. And so I basically had a free pass to do whatever I want in Hollywood. I have influence. I have some money. I have some connections. I have access, basically. And so I go crazy, basically, for 3 years. For 3 years, I'm just doing whatever I want, pursuing my career, hustling, grinding, trying to make it happen, seeing some traction. And this is a long way of basically...
At the height of it, how many... Sorry, not to... How many followers did you have at that time?
So at the time, which is so crazy, on Instagram, when Instagram first launched video, I was in that pool of people who made the switch from Vine to Instagram.
I remember that.
And so at my peak, I was at like 120,000 followers, which the videos were getting like multiple hundreds of thousands upon some of them millions of views.
Yeah.
And then I'm in other videos, and so I'm seeing this happen, and it's like I'm seeing the people I'm around go from like 100,000 to 1 million overnight. And so at this point, the way that I'm thinking is, oh, any day could be my day.
Yeah,
any skit could be my skit.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking all it takes is one. And so I just keep going, keep hustling, keep trying to make videos, keep putting in the reps, because that's how I learned how to create content. That's how I learned how to edit content. That's how I learned everything by throwing myself in the field.
Right.
And that's for a young entrepreneur who's listening, like, you learn when you do. Like, you learn by doing. That's one of the best ways is to get thrown into the world of whatever it is that you want to do. Quentin Tarantino said, I didn't go to film school, I went to film.
Oof.
Which is so brilliant.
Yeah.
He's basically saying my film school was production.
Yeah.
Was being on set, learning how to direct.
Just do it.
Learning how to be being in the room, being exposed to how to do it. And so that was my story, is I just learned how to do it by doing it. And I loved it. Like, I just thought it was something that to be honest, I found a lot of joy in. And it really was like the beginning of me starting to discover myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, that's really where I started to find myself. And it's really interesting because now that I look back at everything, I look back at dance, I look back at acting, I look back at influencing, I look back at all this stuff, and I realized that it was the vehicle to get me to God. I was always a quote unquote Christian, right? I grew up in a Christian faith-based household.
Yeah.
We would go to church on Sundays and go to Wednesday, whatever they used to call it.
Bible studies.
Yeah, I don't even know what we used to call it. Like Sunday, it wasn't Sunday school, but we had like a Wednesday thing. It was kind of like, it wasn't VBS, but I did do VBS.
I did do VBS.
Don't play
too.
with me. I did VBS.
The animal crackers go crazy.
That's what I'm trying to say. Did you ever have the frosted ones?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I knew
but
it
those
was
are expensive, so like we didn't always get them.
Didn't always have them, but when they did, it was a special treat.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, people eat crumble cookies now, which, by the way, I'm not. This is not an endorsement. I'm not a huge fan. I would rather go to Insomnia cookies. Shout out
Insomnia is Tiff's treats or
Tiff's treats is the truth.
It's bomb.
It's the truth.
And low key, cause I know we are going completely off.
Yeah.
But man, crumble, man, I just be feeling sick after,
yeah,
man.
let's not even go there because
they're not gonna get my sponsorship.
I saw this post the other day. I'm sorry, I have to digress. This post was this lady basically saying, this is why Crumble only posts white people's reviews. And then it swipes over and it shows a whole thing of all these black people who are like, this is nasty.
Some of them are good, but it's just mostly.
It was the funniest thing ever because I'm like, that's so true. like anytime I've ever seen like my wife or anybody and I do the same thing. I'm like, if something's not good, it's not good.
It just is what it is.
It's just not good, you know.
But Tiff's treats, go to Tiff's treats.
Tiff's. Tiff shuts it down.
It's so good.
But yeah, man. So I see all these things as a vehicle now to me really finding God, and I don't even think it's me finding God. I think it's God finding me, because going through all of this, I touched on a lot, and so hopefully people are putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
But I kind of lost myself, which is crazy because I never really had myself.
Yeah.
I was a kid who was searching for his identity. I was searching for my value. I was searching for my worth. And a lot of the things that I was going after were so that I could feel more valuable, so that I could feel more worthy.
Or included.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because that community that you're in, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you want to be known among them. That's what they're all doing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm finding my identity in all these things, down to like finding my identity in who I'm connected to. And that's a lot of things. Like in LA, people will ride the coattails of others.
Yeah.
And never own who they are. And so I get to this place where I'm pursuing acting, I'm pursuing, this influencing thing, and both of these are kind of like, those are my swords at the time. Those are the things that I'm working. I'm working with the acting, and I'm working with the content creation.
Yeah.
And so I continue to build there. And my best friend, Jalen Eugene Turner, I'm gonna shout him out. I'm gonna give his full name, the government name, and he goes by Jet. So if you ever want to know why he goes by Jet, it's because his middle name's Eugene. Shout out to Jalen Eugene Turner. But anyways, man, Jalen and we grew up together. I met him when I first started dancing, and Jalen and his family, they are spirit-filled believers, man. They love the Lord, and I remember. And he was still fairly, I wouldn't call him a baby Christian, but he was still fairly new in his own walk, his own discovery, because we're the same age. He's literally a few days older than me.
Oh, wow.
So Jalen, he ends up moving out to California. So all the stuff that I'm talking about, I have 1 year by myself.
Yeah.
And then Jalen moves out there.
Yeah.
And so me and Jalen are on this journey. We're pursuing the influencing thing. We're getting more exposure. He is a cinematographer, photographer, videographer, production director. Like dude is sick. Dude is sick. You should bring him on the pod. Let me plug him now.
Come on, man.
Next time he's in Dallas, I'll show you his stuff afterwards.
Absolutely.
But no, Jalen gets to this point where he realizes, and I realize, I'm like, man, like I don't feel good. Like I really don't feel fulfilled. I'm pursuing all these things. I'm starting to get more accolades, but it's never enough. No matter how many followers I get, it's not enough because I see so-and-so has 1 million, or I see so-and-so, their video hit 15 million. And so there's this competitive comparison culture where everyone is competing against each other and everyone's trying to one up the next guy. Even friends are literally stabbing each other in the back, stealing each other's concepts. So I'm seeing all this stuff happen. And so on the outside looking in, it's like, oh, wow, this guy's got a lot of followers. This guy's making a name for himself in the city of LA. This guy has clearly a lot of influence, and so on the outside looking in, it just seems like everything's wonderful, and my life is all together, and I'm probably very wealthy and very well off. I had poor stewardship problems, like I just said earlier. Like I if I had money, I was spending it, so it didn't even matter. And so there's this facade that people think these influencers have this thing, and I realized, man, my life is not fulfilled. Like I'm not fulfilled. Like there's something more. And I remember Jalen was like, man, we need to find a church. And so he's like, let's just pray about it, bro. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. And so he leads us in a prayer, and we just kind of like leave it there. And I kid you not, we go to shoot a skit, like I think maybe a few days later, with this actress. She's phenomenal. And I wanted to shoot this like fight scene type of thing, because she did a lot of like stunt stuff, like stunt work, and she's like a jiu-jitsu like fighter, like she's sick. And so I reach out to her, we go to shoot a video with her, and her husband are basically like, hey, like Easter's coming up, would you guys like to come to church with us? And so I'm thinking, bro, I was like, we gotta go. Like that's crazy. I was like, that's a sign. He's like, well, we prayed about it. And I'm like, there you go. But it's a sign. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we decide to go with them to church. We go to their Easter service. It's a beautiful church, this historic church in LA. It's called Oasis Church. Shout out to Oasis.
Oh yes, I know Oasis.
I forget who the pastor is there now, but beautiful church. And we go there, and at the time, to be honest, I still wasn't really in the place to receive. So even if they were preaching good, it didn't matter, because I still wasn't really receiving. But I start tithing, and I start really considering the things that are being preached. And I'm like, okay, cool. And the friends that we were around at the time, they were like, man, we got to go and try out this other church. And that church was this other big church in the city. So we try out this church, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like it's a lot more young people here. Like this is sick. And I get comfortable. I'm like, this is great. It's encouraging. The music's good. I know what to expect every week. And then another shakeup comes. And one of my friends is like, hey man, we need to go try out One LA. And so I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I'm happy at this church. Like, I feel like this church is giving me what I need.
They don't get in my business. They let me do my thing.
Here, And meanwhile, I'm inspired, but nothing in my life is changing. Oof. I'm getting puffed up with all this great talk, but nothing's happening. There's no fruit. The fruit looks just like the fruit of the world.
Man.
Literally, my life still looked exactly like everyone in the world, and yet I'm still wearing this title, Christian. Man. I look nothing like Christ. Man. And so I finally give in, and I say, fine, we'll go to one church, whatever. And we go to one church. I'm dragging my feet the whole way up to the door. I'm like, whatever, man. Cool, another church. Yeah. Walk in, and the moment that we get to the front, I just remember the way, because that forced stuff that churches do. Hey, welcome, we're so glad you're here. I'm like, no, you're not. You're lying. You don't want to be here.
Someone trained you
super early to get here to serve, and I know you don't want to be here. Don't smile at me like that. And so I'm used to that, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta walk up on these greeters. Yeah, bro. The genuine enthusiasm that these people had was just infectious from out of the gate. I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, okay. So I'm sizing it up. Yeah. And it's almost like every step I take towards the building, into the pews, it's like God is chipping away at me. Because I was so reluctant, man. I'm like, I'm not going to one church, man. And because I was already comfortable in where I was, because it was, it was itching my ears. And so I feel good there. I'm like, yeah, we're good. We don't need to go to another church. I go in there, and first of all, the worship is unlike anything I've ever experienced before in my entire life. I'm shocked because the room shifted. I'd never experienced anything like that. I just remember I was like, what?
It feels different.
This is wild, but I like it. And then the word comes forward. And so the pastor is Pastor Torrey Roberts. And Pastor Torrey gets up there. And when I tell you, it was as if every single word was cutting through like not even like a hacksaw. It was just like,
man.
And it was like these words were exactly things that I was talking to other people about, exactly things that I had been privately praying about, exactly what I was going through in my life. And so from that moment forward, we leave the service, and I remember telling them all, I'm like, I will not miss a service at this church. I'm coming back next week. And then I find out they have a Thursday night service too. So I start going every Thursday, every Sunday. And the words are convicting, but they're taught in such a way that are, one, relevant, two, spirit-filled, and three, applicable. So I start taking in what I'm receiving from the word, and I start really seeing changes in my life. And at first it was hard because a lot of people didn't really understand like why I was starting to not do things that I used to do, why I started to not go to places that I used to go to. And so my whole life starts changing.
You actually start becoming like Christ.
Yeah. Which is crazy because you would think that that's what a Christian should do, but so many of us miss it because we want to do Christianity our way. We want comfortable Christianity.
Yeah.
And comfortable Christianity is not a real Christianity.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah.
And so, and it doesn't mean that it's not a blessed life. It doesn't mean that it's not incredible. I would rather trade the benefits of being a follower, a son of God, than any benefit the world could ever give me. I would give up everything that the world could ever give me. Because by the way, I've tasted most of what the world can offer.
Wow.
I have.
Yeah.
I've tasted the heights of influence. I've been around the circles. I've been around celebrities, not church celebrities, real celebrities. Like I've been around that.
Yeah.
That was my world. That was my life.
Yeah.
And so I realized, I'm like, man, there's something happening here. And PT's preaching about the Holy Spirit and how you're filled with the Spirit and all these things are happening. And so I start to really just take it seriously. And I remember it was October 18th of 2018. And at this point, I'm trying to kind of fast track this whole thing. But it's a whole year of me just in there, getting full of word, full of worship, just learning and being exposed to this culture where everyone is like, they're the real deal. Like they're not shaking, faking. They're not in there just fake smiling. It's very authentic, very vulnerable, very real. And I'm like, man, things are changing in my life. And I remember at the time, I was still pursuing acting and still creating content. And I start really getting successful. Like how could I paint this picture better? So there's a term in the auditioning process that's called pinned, like when you get pinned. And so if you get pinned for a role, that means that you're up for that. Like,
Got it.
And so that usually only happens with like network television or streaming, TV, like shows, like big shows, like network stuff. And so there's two particular shows on this large network that essentially this network births like stars, like modern day stars. This network is the one that's responsible for like, if you get on a show on this network, you're good.
Yeah.
And so I'm pinned for two shows. Both shows contain some things that were very contradictory to the faith that I'm now starting to live out. And one of them in particular had a lot to do with witchcraft.
Wow.
It was literally a show about witchcraft.
What?
It was a teenage show. And those who know, they're filling in the blanks right now.
I got you.
But it was a teenage show about witchcraft. And I'm pinned for this. I'm getting calls from the casting directors. I'm literally like, they're like, go get your passport. This shoots in Canada. Like, you need to expedite a passport because essentially, like, this is my manager talking. You're getting this. Like, this is your role.
Wow.
And so I'm thinking, well, I'm starting to follow God. Maybe this is like God letting my dreams come true. I'm like, this is great. And I expedited the passport. I spent a bunch of money that I didn't have. I actually had to ask to borrow the money at the time, which is crazy. But I got the passport, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in the waiting process. Still in the waiting process. Yeah, no, we're just waiting. We got to hear back. Once we hear back, we'll let you know. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. So I'm still going to church, still whatever. I'm thinking, okay, I'm pinned for this. 2 weeks go by. I get a call. Hey, they ended up casting somebody else. They went a different direction. I was like, oh. Okay. Cool. So in my mind at the time, I'm thinking, yeah, man, like this is where my life is going. Like I'm going to get this show. And when I get this show, my career is going to explode, and I'll give all the glory to God, and
Yeah.
I'll,
And your award
become
speeches,
this,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll be this famous actor
Yeah.
who has this hit TV show, and it'll be great. That wasn't God's plan. That was my plan. But the word says, I believe it's Proverbs 19 and 21, that it's the purposes of God that prevail. Man makes many plans, but the purposes of God prevail. And so I'm seeing how this is literally playing out in my life. I get, from that moment, I'm going to church consistently, and I'm really just kind of sad, man, because I'm like, man, like, this was supposed to be my big shot.
Right.
And so I remember the message had something to do with, and it was called Play Your Hand by Pastor Ty Headlee. So like, if y'all really want to know a little bit more about me, go get that message. It's still on YouTube. But he preaches, and he's preaching about the parable of the talents and how you have multiple different things, and God can work with these different things that you have, and you have to steward them well. And he talked about how if you don't surrender your life, God can't even use the things that you want him to use. He can't use you if you're not surrendered. And so I'm like, man, I don't think I'm surrendered. Like, I don't think I'm really like submitted. Like, I think I'm getting there, but like, I'm not surrendered.
Yeah.
And this is the moment where I'll call this my catalyst moment. Like, this is the moment where everything changes in my entire life. Like, this is the moment where the light bulb turns on, and I realize that there's so much more to following Jesus than just salvation. And there's an altar call at the end of the service. And this altar call is, if you want to give God your yes, that's the language. If you want to give God your yes, your complete yes for all of you, for everything. And it's like, without a doubt, I feel this tug on my shirt, as if it's like, and no one was there. No one was there.
Yeah.
I feel this tug on my shirt, and I couldn't resist it. I go to the altar, bro. I'm jumping over chairs. I'm pressing through people.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's like somebody needs to tackle this dude. But it was as if something came over me, and I'm like, man, I got to get down there. And so I get to the altar. I press my way through the crowd, and PT is laying hands, and boom, lays hands on me. It was like electric honey. I fell flat to the floor. That's the best way I can describe it. It's electric honey. Because like, it was like electricity, but it didn't hurt. It felt kind of sweet. And I remember it was like instantly just tears, and I was coughing, and what's crazy is it was deliverance, but it was also me getting filled with the Holy Spirit, and it was just this profound spiritual encounter that you can't even describe. Like, to describe it is a disservice. Like, it was God, like the hand of God literally touched me, and I fall to the floor. I'm down for like probably another 30 minutes, bro, weeping.
Wow.
On the floor. Service is wrapping up. It's a long altar call. Pastor Ray stops the service as he's closing, and it's still streaming, and he's looking around, he spots me, and he goes, Tyler, son, come here. I go up on the stage, I'm walking up there, I'm a mess. I'm like hunched over, I'm crying, I got long hair, I think I'm cool, I got this like little Hawaiian shirt, it's all open, I got my chest out in the church, and I go up there, man, and like, it's like there's no facade, there's no flexing, there's no me trying to be this influencer guy, it's just me broken before God and before my pastor and before the whole church. And he just embraces me as a son, pulls me in, and then starts to give me this word. And I remember walking away from that moment, man, and it was literally the moment that changed my entire life. He calls me that night. I actually texted him, and I was like, what just happened? Like, I'm tripping. He calls me, brief call, very brief. He said, son, this is something that only the hand of God can do. And sometimes these things are unexplainable. But what I can tell you is that God's hand is on your life. And from this moment forward, you need to get a journal, and you need to write down everything that God speaks to you. And you need to get in his presence daily and trust that he will reveal things to you. And it will become clear one day. And I said, okay, cool. Sounds good, sir.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I got this journal. I committed to getting in the presence every single day. And it became a process of my life. It became a big part of how I was moving. And so for a year and a half, and I know you have so many more questions, and I've just been rambling.
Hey, we flowing, man.
But man,
it's all good.
And I want you to get to them, and hopefully we can. But no, bro. So man, I literally, and this is crazy because with all of this, there's so much more like emotion and feeling and an experience that can only be lived. But I hope that I can do it justice. But a year and maybe 3 months, isolated. Friends that I was around, even friends that I used to go to church with, not understanding me anymore. Thinking, what is this dude doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is weird. I wouldn't hang out. I wouldn't go out. And it wasn't even because I didn't want to. It was just that I was convinced I need to hear from God.
I mean, it's the set apart. It's the holy. That's what holy means.
Yeah. And and that's exactly what I was going to say is I realize now it was sanctification.
Yeah.
It was God taking me through this process for a year and some change where every day I would get up and my only agenda was to seek him. I still needed to make money, so I would take little jobs here and there, and I started to work in production. And so I was serving at the church at this time. Now I started serving, and I'm shooting stuff with camera, and people start offering me jobs and opportunities. So I start taking these opportunities, and I'm able to pay my rent, which this is a miracle. This is probably, I don't know that anybody will ever have this testimony. I literally only had to pay $210 a month for rent.
In LA.
Caveat. I lived with dang near 7 people.
Oh. Oh, that's how. Okay. You slept on the floor.
I have my own corner with my own bed. I won't lie. I have my own corner with my own bed. But there were 3 of us in one bedroom. Dang. Me, my brother Jalen, and our brother Jesse Lee. And so all 3 of us are in this room. And so we're in LA. We're pursuing our dreams. And God just gets a hold of my life. And it's literally a 180 complete change. And I go from this kid who's chasing his dream and that's what everything's all about, and a womanizer and just searching for my value in so many places, to this isolated place where I recognize all of my value is found in his presence. Everything that life, like it was almost like the taste for life just was gone. Like I didn't not in a depressed way, but in the sense of like nothing else matters.
Right.
And so for a year and a half, a year and some change, it's not a half, it's like a year and 3 months, isolated, worship, sermons, podcasts, that's it. And I'm just consuming and taking stuff in and getting still and praying, and God's speaking to me, and I'm journaling, I'm writing all these things out, and I'm seeing how God is moving in my life, and I'm in church consistently. I'm still going every Thursday, every Sunday, I'm serving, I'm involved, and I just start to see not my external success change, but my internal success. I start seeing my heart soften. I start going through these profound things like forgiveness. Yeah. Which it sounds so simple, but deep pain in my life. God would confront me and tell me, you need to forgive this person. And I had so many different encounters, which it would take so long to unpack. Yeah. But God would test me and try me and take me through things. And I didn't pass every test. Yeah. But he was gracious enough to bring things around and around and around. And I basically get to this point where I'm sold out, I'm committed. I'm like, God, whatever you want to do with my life, I'm yours. The acting stuff fades away. The management team and the people who were like basically kind of employed by me, that's you are the one who pays the bills. So they one by one drop. I got a phone call, hey, can't move forward with you. Dropped. So all these things start to fall. All these different things start to fall. All of my attention to the things that I was previously doing starts to go away. And so I'm locked in with God, and, that's where I got to. And now my life, as a result of this, I believe it's like Matthew 6:33, that when you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all things will be added unto your life. And so now I'm going into year 8 of really, really, truly walking a sold out life with God. There's so much more to the testimony, but that's the long... because I was going to say the long and the short. It wasn't short. But that's the story of how it came to be, from Omaha, Nebraska to LA at 18 to influencing to seeing that blow up and seeing all these different things happen to finally get to a point where I'm like, man, none of this is really fulfilling me. And then we find this church, and God meets me there. God pulls me out. He plucked me out of the fire. And so, man.
Oh my goodness.
I need to drink this water. I'm gonna let you go ahead and get the question.
You good, bro?
I'm sweating. I probably beat red. I probably look like a tomato. My ears. My goodness.
No, listen. I wanted people to hear that story. One, because, and I forget the stat exactly, but like the most desired career right now is content creation. Like it just is. Like you can't deny it. That's what everybody wants to be. Kids coming out of high school, that's what they want to be. And I feel like we've been hitting that in this season 2 of Faith Hustle of, listen, it's beautiful. We need to leverage it, right? Here's the practical steps, how to leverage it, how to build a personal brand, whatever it is. But be careful, and this trap of influence, it can get you, and all these different things. And I think the Lord, I think, is doing something within this with your story. I've told you off camera things that I believe you'll step into of helping people who are in that space or influencers, because, you know, I think, you know, we're in another evolution of that, right? Yep. It's you know, we've seen kind of the result of it in the same way that you like the Disney Channel stars that we grew up.
It's become its own industry.
Yeah,
it's literally an industry
that we grew up watching, of like, oh man, it's innocent, and then you see them go through all their dilemmas. You're like, oh my goodness, like all these people turned out crazy. You know what I mean? And so I think we're like on that side of it now, and but it's a beautiful story of surrender, and really, when we talk about building God's way, part of it is, you know, the scripture where it says, delight yourself in the Lord, who'll give you the desires of your heart.
Absolutely.
You start delighting, you start wanting new stuff. And because your taste buds have changed. Yeah. Like, it's just different. It's like your palate changes.
100%.
And what tastes good before doesn't taste good now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you letting go your management team, your agent, and saying, no, yes, that was part of my story, but that's not going to, you know, that's not finishing, you know, the book. I think it's just inspiring and so powerful to help people, man. Man, there's so many places I want to go with it, but thank you for sharing it, for real, man.
No, thank you for creating the space, man. This is a gift, and I'm grateful to be able to share it, and that's part of my life's mission. And I think it should be all of our mission, is to share the good, the bad, the ugly, share your story, because Revelation 12:11, and this is one of the verses I live by and do everything that I do by, says that they overcome him, the enemy, by the blood of the Lamb and the words of their testimony. Yeah. So every believer, you have the blood of the Lamb, but one unique thing that you have that I don't have is your testimony. Yes. And one unique thing that I have that you don't have is my testimony. Right. And it's when we share our testimonies that we get to see how Jesus can show up and change a life, how he can set somebody free, how he can heal somebody, how he can take a kid who felt rejected by so many different people in his life to being completely accepted and feeling whole within himself, content in all things. I'm not tripping about anything. And I'm healing still. Absolutely. But I love to think of it as I'm whole and healing. Yeah. Because I'm content. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, I mean, if you look back, I mean, progress, the beautiful thing about progress is in the moment, it doesn't feel like, I mean, obviously, it's a lot of times it can feel like you made progress, but a lot of times you don't. But then you look back and, oh man, I've been walking a long time, and man, the distance keeps growing larger and larger from where you started. And so that's the beautiful thing, man. Man, that's so powerful. Okay, I got 2 more questions for you. One, I mean, I love for people to hear what life looks like now, because it's you're married, beautiful wife, right? You know, amazing family. You guys are literally like touching nations with the content and the ministry that you guys are doing. You are creating content and running content for different ministries. So like, tell me, like, even the difference of what you were doing in content and influencing and doing it now, what's life look like now? Yeah, that's such a good question. What life looks like now is completely different than everything I just described, because those 8 years from the moment that I was talking about when I started to really journal, that 1.5 years of me really tuning myself to hear the voice of God, like to discern what God's voice sounds like to me, how I can hear him, not just when I read the word, but also when he's impressing things upon my heart. I started to just follow the voice. I started to just follow the voice of the Holy Spirit. And sometimes it was with trial and error. Yeah. But more often than not, I would see how following the voice led me to things that I never would have imagined. And so I say that it's completely different because I didn't see any of this for my life.
Yeah.
I don't come from a ministry background. None of my family was in ministry. I did find out about one thing with my grandfather, who I never met, my mother's father, and he had some kind of ministry ties, but that's a whole nother story. But other than that, like, and keep in mind, I just found that out in like my 20s. Like, I didn't even know that. So my whole life, I go just being a Christian, but not really looking like Christ, not really following Jesus. And then I see what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
And so I start following him, and he's leading me into incredible things. I am married now to my wife. Shout out Ren Taylor Roberts Headlee. I'm dropping these people's government names. I'm dropping these people's government names
right now. I don't know if you want the whole government
It's
name.
all right. She's fine. Yeah. I didn't give the, it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Shout out to Ren. We love you.
But no, so how that came about, I think it's really interesting. I was serving at the church and got to this place where our executive pastor, Pastor Stephanie Ike, shout out to her, Ike Okafor.
Because she's also married.
Yes, Pastor Steph is my sister. She's just...
And a monster.
Yeah.
Like, monster communicator. That girl,
she no joke.
She will tear you up and cook you up while smiling like
and
this.
Humble and meek
you
way.
You need deliverance. And you're like, ah!
Yeah, and it's serious. It's serious. I've had moments where I've been on the receiving end of things like that with her. So, no. But she is our executive pastor at our church in LA. And I'm serving, and of course, that's a volunteer. And she basically was like, hey, what do you think about being our creative director? Keep in mind, I'm like 21, 22.
Yeah.
So like I have no experience in that regard. Like as a professional, like all I have is my influencer experience.
Yeah.
And me creating content for myself, and then me doing, videos here and there for the church because that's how I was serving. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Count me in.
Yeah.
And so I basically take on this role, and they're like, hey, so we're going to put you through a trial period, and then we'll bring you on as a staff member, and that's how we'll go. It was the most stressful, hard, difficult, crazy, anxiety just full.
Yeah.
Like I was like, man, this is insane.
Yeah.
And so I get to this point where I'm like, I don't think I'd made the right choice. And so I'm like, I think this was a bad idea. And so this is how God, when it talks about in Romans 8:28, God causes all things to work together for the good of those who are called according to his purposes and those that love him.
Come on, Pastor.
And keep in mind, like, we could unpack that scripture and we could really preach it, but we don't need to because y'all get the gist. But anyways, God worked this thing together because, again, I'm following his voice. I'm thinking, okay, creative director of the church. Yeah. God's all over this, of course.
Yeah.
I take it and swiftly find out that I am in way over my head. I reach out to PT directly, and him and I had already started building a relationship. Him and I had already started building a relationship. And so I'm like, hey, I'm kind of doing this creative director thing for the church, and I'm in a trial period, and I don't think I'm in the right place or position. I think, and I had this whole metaphor, bro. I was so spiritual. I was like, sir, I feel like Jonah.
Oh, gosh.
I feel like if I stay in this position too long, I'm gonna sink the ship. I literally said this to him. And he calls me, because I sent it in a voice note. He calls me and he goes, hey, what are you up to? I'm like, I'm just walking right now in the neighborhood. And he's like, what you got going on today? I'm like, not much. He's like, how about you come out to the house? I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll come out to the house.
Yeah.
So he sends me the address, just drops me a text with the address. And I'm like, okay, cool. So head out to the house. And as soon as I get there, he's in the driveway in his car. And he goes, hop in. And I get in the car with him. And he's basically like, hey, I'm just going to run down to the bike store down the street and pick up a bike that I ordered, and, we'll just chat. I'm like, okay, cool. So we go down the hill and we go to this bike store. And the whole way there, I'm kind of explaining to him my situation, what's going on, what my thought process is. And he's very inquisitive. So he's wanting to know, like, what are your thoughts behind this? And what, okay, cool. So, what do you mean by that when you say this? What do you mean by that? So he's very inquisitive. And so I'm in there getting schooled and I don't even know it. And he's like, okay. He's like, so I hear you. And he basically takes everything I said and wraps it up in this perfectly articulated statement and presents it back to me. He's like, this is where you're at. This is what you're feeling. And here's what we can do about it if you're interested. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. And essentially what it was he said, that's not the position I would have put you in. I think that the team may have kind of jumped the gun, and it's with good intention because, we do want to have you a part of the ministry. We do want to involve you and give you an opportunity to express some of your creative gifts and talents. And, you're really great with content. He's like, so how about this? He's like, what I'm thinking is I pull you in closer and I have you jump on my team as my executive assistant. Keep in mind, again, no experience as an assistant at all whatsoever. I've never done anything in the world of assisting anybody.
Acting, content, yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And again, same thing. He's like, go home, pray about it. And I do that. I go home, pray about it. I hit him up the next morning because I'm like, I feel like I should do this. And so I say yes. And again, it's yes after yes after yes. And I'm trying to build this up so that people can see what happens when you're obedient to God, because I didn't know what was on the other side of me saying yes to this assistant role.
Yeah.
I knew that my pastor was offering to pull me close, and he made it clear to me that this would be sort of a discipleship role and that I would learn a lot as I'm close to him. And while I'm doing this, I really start to sense that God was calling me in a unique and specific way, similar to my pastor, because he's an entrepreneur, he is a producer, he's an author, he's a polymath. I mean, he does everything. And I'm getting to the point where in the story where we'll get there. We'll get there. I promise you, McQuenda. I'm so sorry. I promise you.
You here, dog? Come on.
But we get to this thing where I'm like, God, I'm seeing these visions of me speaking, and I'm seeing all these things play out with me teaching, and the word starts to come alive to me in a way that's different. And I'm like, am I supposed to be a preacher? I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, okay. And so I'll tell PT that. And he's like, okay. He's like, and we talk through that. And he's like, you just have to keep trusting God's process for you.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to keep trusting God's process for me. I'm going to keep working. I do everything that I can as his executive assistant. And I'm, pursuing that role and just, that's it. That's my bread and butter. I'm his executive assistant. I'm traveling with him from LA to Denver because we had a Denver campus. So I start doing that. And then it was... because that was the end of 2019 to 2020, right before the pandemic. Oh, the pandemic. Oh, 2020. Oh, 2020. The 2 years that felt like 15.
Especially in LA, I'm sure. My God. Texas, they had it for like 2 months.
I ain't gonna lie to you. That was the best time to ever live in LA because there was no traffic.
Oh, snap.
So I could go anywhere without having to sit in traffic for hours.
I saw a picture of like the smog in LA like before and like during COVID, and it was clear.
Gone, clear.
It was, you could see.
Oh no, it was amazing. It was glorious. It was what LA was intended to be. It's what God had in mind when he established. No,
before all these people came. Anyways.
Exactly, but bro, so basically, I'm doing this job. And Pastor Sarah has a movement called Women Evolve. And so we do a tour, and we usually do a fall tour and a summer tour or a winter tour. It's usually two a year. And at the time, they were already going through tours. I think this was their second year, and they invite me to come out on the tour. And I'm like, okay, dope. So PT invites me out to the house. He's like, make sure you bring all your stuff. You're going to just fly with us. I'm thinking, okay, cool. And I get there, and keep in mind, PT and Pastor Sarah, they have... I think it's 6 kids total. Yeah, there's 6. Yep, 6. And 2 of them are friends of mine. And then Ren, who's my wife.
Come on now.
Now, again, I told y'all a bunch of puzzle pieces that we're going to start to put together. And keep in mind, I had no intention of becoming
the son-in-law. He said yes to God, got him a wife.
Yeah, it's crazy that like I know it sounds simple, but I promise you all this was a process. But all of it, I can point back to like the moment that I gave God my yes, the moment I gave God my surrender. But anyways, we're here about ready to go on this tour, and I remember the moment as if it was Ren descending down the staircase like a Disney movie, and just this big smile on her face. She didn't come down the staircase. She came around the corner. She always tells me that. She's like, I didn't come down no staircase. I came around the corner. I'm like, in my mind, you came down that staircase with your glass slippers on, and it was a princess moment. It was amazing. But anyways, and there was a little bit of curiosity, and I was like, oh.
Curiosity. You said,
you know what? I'm gonna just put that to bed. I'm not gonna think about that ever again because this is my boss. This is my pastor. This is my spiritual
boss
father.
And pastor is crazy
work. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
We get in the car or whatever, and it's like homies. out the gate. Me, her, Isaiah, Taya, Malachi, all of us, we just hit it off. And we had already known each other prior to that, but I had never really gotten to know Ren. And so we're on the tour, and they put me on the same bus as the kids. So we're all on this bus, and so literally night after night, me, Ren, Taya, Isaiah, we'd be up, and Malachi, we'd be up hanging out, talking, sharing about what we felt like God was doing, what God was going to do in, you know, in the cities that we were visiting, and what God was doing in our lives. And it was this beautiful thing. And, you know, everybody would go to sleep, and I would stay up, and Ren and I would talk.
Fellowship.
Fellowship. Oh, and keep in mind, it was very wholesome. It was very holy. It was very holy.
You're a man of God.
It was very holy. But we started to just really connect, and I was like, man, she's really, really dope. And so we're on this tour. I'm there focused on serving and being in my role, and the tour ends, and literally the next week, pandemic hits. But me and her had established this really great friendship. And so we're texting basically every day after this thing, and I'm like, this is crazy. Can you believe there's a pandemic? Like, thank God none of us got sick on the road. And we're still texting. Still going about my work. We're all trying to adjust and figure out, what does work look like? What does ministry look like? What does any of this even look like with the entire world shut down? And so while all that's happening, and I'm, you know, serving the ministry, helping in the ministry, I'm also still growing in my friendship at the time with Brent, getting to know each other, and the conversations keep going, and then eventually I test the water a little bit, and I start flirting. And when that happened, I was like, oh, this is bad. And I was like, you know what?
He's Steph Curry.
This is how it has to happen. If I'm going to move forward in this, I already made it up in my mind. I'm like, if I'm going to move forward in this, I have to
talk to the man of God.
To the man. I've got to talk to the man. And so Ren and I had gotten on the same page, and she actually was the one who asked me first. She said, hey, what are your intentions, brother?
Woo! Come on, woman of God. This is not a relationship podcast.
It's not.
Good advice.
But she said it. She said, what are your intentions? And I told her what my intentions were. They were that, that I wanted to pursue her in a relationship, that I felt like God was calling us to continue to grow as the relationship would go forward, and that all roads for me, if I'm going to date somebody, would lead to marriage. And that was flat out what it was. She said, okay, cool.
There you go.
Cool. And I said, now I would have brought this up first had I talked to your father. And then I ended up, basically being in a position where I reached out to him, and I was trying to set up a time for me to come and talk to him face to face. And he goes, I'm not busy right now. How about you FaceTime me? Dog, I hope you guys can picture this. This is my boss. This is my pastor. This is my spiritual father.
And you're like, hey, your daughter got a thing going on. We got a thing going on.
He goes, he answers the phone, and I feel like the Holy Ghost probably revealed this to him, because he goes, hey, son, what's on your heart? Clear my throat. Well, sir, I don't know how to really say this, but I started to get close with one of your children.
Get close with one of your children?
And he's just staring at me through the FaceTime, and he's just kind of looking at me and just nodding his head, and it was a smile, and it kind of turned to like not a frown, but more of like a serious like. He said, He said, okay. And he heard me, and I expressed myself. I expressed my intentions. And he goes, okay, cool.
Oh, man.
And he goes, well, first of all, have fun. Take your time. There's no need to rush into anything, and so, if this was you calling me to ask me for my blessing, you have it. Yeah. And that it was the shortest combo.
Oh man, the pauses would kill me.
The pauses were killing me. Every single pause, I was like, Ty.
It's like, and you're fired.
And I'm sweting. I'm sitting there because that's what's on the line.
Yeah.
Literally, my church is on the line.
And you
my job is on the line.
In LA.
Yeah, exactly. Where am I going to go? Go back to one of the other churches I mentioned. I mean, God bless them, and I love some of those churches. But no, I mean, God met me here. I can't give this up. So all the stakes were very high. And he gives me his blessing, and he ends the call by saying this. He goes, "Hey, you're probably pretty nervous after this, huh?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Good." And then that was the end of the call.
Dang.
That was the end of the call.
Oh, that's...
now, fast forward. My wife and I have been married now for 2.5 years.
Come on.
We were together, so we've been together almost 5 years total. But together, married 2.5. And we live in Dallas, Texas now.
Come on.
Which is crazy. Because even that, again, another yes to God. So I forgot, what was the question?
What are you doing now? But no, that's a man.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I've turned faith hustle into faith story.
Relationship. No. Relationship hustle. All of it. No, man. That story is awesome. I when you told me, I said, bro, I would literally have to change my pants because
honestly. I almost had to, bro.
Dude,
it was that
my
nerve-wracking.
gosh.
I was sweating bullets, but thank God it worked out because
by the grace of we are here today.
We're here today to tell the story on Faith Hustle Podcast.
Yeah. And so you serve as. Are you doing creative directing and different other things? Or?
So at this point, I'm his executive assistant. That's my full role, and it's doing everything I can to serve him. I'm traveling with him. I'm essentially like a glorified armor bearer. So whenever we have services, I'm there helping him out. I'm serving him, getting whatever he needs, and also I'm doing content for him.
Yeah,
and that was just kind of like baked into the pie.
Yeah,
so like I'm doing content for him. I'm creating social clips, and I'm learning how to create church content.
Yeah.
Content out of the messages, which at the time that was relatively new. 2018, like that was when people started making like sermon clips.
Yeah.
And so I started making sermon clips for him, and that grew and blossomed into me serving on the social media team. And as I've served on that team for now almost 8 years as well, I've seen me go from just giving little ideas here and there to now I oversee our social media with my friend Carmen, my associate Carmen, my pal Carmen, whatever you want to call her. Carmen, she's incredible, by the way, just phenomenal person and great social media manager and just excellent in a lot of different ways. But me and Carmen kind of oversee our social team in LA. I still do that currently to this day. And then I also founded and started a young adults ministry called Generation One, which was a digital ministry with a podcast. And so we put out, I think we had probably 65 episodes, 3 seasons. And we're on a hiatus right now because we're really staring at what does God want to do for young adults and how do we serve that. So praying through that. But yeah, those are kind of the capacities in which I serve as far as the church goes. And then what I do outside of the church is I still create content for myself. As we referred to at the top, there's a new project that I've been working on called Tips with Ty, which is essentially me sharing testimony, story, teachings, anything I can do to equip young believers, young adults, teenagers, everything in between. For their journey and for what it is that God's calling them to do. And so that's kind of my world. And then outside of that, I create content through my business. I have a media company where I service multiple different entrepreneurs, thought leaders, pastors, movements, whatever, with social content. We just, for example, we just launched the Woman Evolve TikTok during conference. And so me and my friend Jet, shout out to Jalen Eugene Turner. I'm saying yo government name again. Me and Jet launched the Woman Evolve TikTok. So if you saw any of those videos, we were responsible for putting that out into the world. And so those are some of the things that I get to do on my more entrepreneurial side. But that's kind of where I'm at now, man.
It's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, you said it like it's like, oh, I just do one thing. It's like, no, there's like her 10.
Yeah.
No, that's, man. It's listen. The reason I'm sitting back and you probably haven't heard me if you're listening to audios because one, I love storytelling and good storytelling, and sometimes we just need to be inspired. Sometimes we need a testimony just to be like, man, okay, like just to be refueled again. And so I think that's what this episode will be. And yeah, I know it's a little long, but it's worth it, for people to just get that fuel and that hope. And, man, just to be like, just to see the faithfulness of God, and just what God can do. And man, I'm grateful for you, bro. It's never been about who I didn't even know who, that world you were a part of when we first met. Yeah. And to me, that don't matter to me. Like, I'm just like, hey, are we cool? Like, is this a God thing that God's put us together, and I'm looking for people, let's run the next 20, 30 years, you know what I mean? And so I believe God put you in my life for a reason, and that together we'll keep running. But man, thank you for being on, man. And obviously I'm going to put I know you shared a lot of your testimony on this, which is actually, which is amazing. This is like a part 2 of your episode. But I'm going to put your channel below and all that different stuff so people continue to get inspired, bro. We need more testimonies, man. We really do. And so I love your story, love your heart, bro. And you'll definitely be bafor sure. Man,
I'm grateful. I'm excited to share. And sorry for those faithful Faith Hustle listeners who are like, hey, dog, I didn't sign up for Dr. Phil. didn't sign up for Dr. McQuenda, but today you got Dr. McQuenda, and that might be prophetic.
Hey, come on now.
Right.
I'll take a doctorate.
Yeah.
I'll take an honorary doctorate when I have to go to the school. You know what I mean? Praise God. Anyways, love you, bro. And so glad you could be here.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Faith Hustle Podcast. We hope you were encouraged, inspired, and feel equipped to walk out your faith hustle. If you want to come on this journey with us in growing in our business and faith, I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on audio platforms like Apple or Spotify or YouTube. We would love to take this journey with you, and we can't wait to see what God does in your business. We look forward to seeing you soon.